Hey y'all, Enzo here with you from Knox Knife Mods, and tonight we've got a very special episode of Takedown Talk. This is one that has been long in the making. I've had the idea for this episode for years, and I just haven't sat down to do it. And finally, a few months ago, I did sit down to do it, making a video on the Wee Mini Buster, a knife that ties for my favorite knife ever between this and the 8010 from Cold Steel. Now, as I was finishing this up, it was announced that this knife, the Civivi Buster FG, was dropping at the end of this month. It actually technically hasn't released yet, but I have one. We'll get more into that later. But I thought to myself, this is too good of an opportunity. I'm still working on the video. We're just gonna combine them both into one awesome, epic video. So yes, Takedown Talk 17 is on two knives, the Wee Mini Buster and the Civivi Buster FG. So why are these knives so special to me? Well, we'll start with the Mini Buster here. It was a knife that when it came out back in, I believe it came out in 2018 or 2019. When it came out in that year, I was really intrigued by the design. I didn't know anything about the designer Snex, but I was blown away by just the visual appearance of this knife. And to this day, it still is incredibly striking to me. The milling patterns on it, all of the tiny little details. When you look over this knife, there's just so much of it to take in. You've got the portals here that look really cool. I like the pocket clip a lot. That milled clip I think looks really awesome. Everything about it is just so interesting and visually appealing. And I remember thinking, the first time I saw it, the name is the Mini Buster, and I thought to myself, you know, I wonder if that's an intentional reference to Cloud Strife's Buster Sword from Final Fantasy VII. So if you guys aren't Final Fantasy nerds, my apologies. I'm a big one, and it's one of these things that bleeds into the mods I make. A lot of the mods are named after Final Fantasy things, whether it's, you know, enemy types or characters or summons. It's a big part of what I'm into. So this knife always represented that to me from the moment I first saw it. So I wanted to get it when it came out, couldn't afford it, so I didn't get it. And then the run ended and I couldn't get one. And this is way back when Slicey Dicey was still on YouTube. Any of y'all remember him? He had done a video on it where he had claimed that I think they were only doing like 1,500 on their run. It's like, I don't know if they're ever gonna come back. Well, he was wrong, they came back. But I bought one used in the interim, and that's this one right here, and I've had it ever since. And I really love it. It's been one of my favorite knives, constantly in the pocket. So it's an excellent knife. And the fact that we now have this is so amazing to me, because this, the Buster FG, is basically a production version of the very first Buster, the one that Snex made back in 2017. He released them as custom models. They were this size, more or less the same sort of length. I don't know about handle thickness. Basically, take your Mini Buster and imagine full-size Buster having all of the trim and appearance of this Mini Buster, the titanium handle, the milling, all the sculpting, all that stuff, just with this size. That was the original custom Snex Buster. And those were incredibly limited. Really amazing pieces that when they went up for auction, you know, good luck affording them is all I could say. I would never be able to afford one. So the fact that we have this now is amazing. But I guess that gives us the opportunity to really dive into the story of Snex, the designer, because he's done some incredible stuff in the knife world. Starting off with his model, the IFS-20, which was a very innovative take on a fully disassemblable knife without having to use hand tools. Pretty amazing. If I can throw a clip up of him disassembling it, I'll have it up here. Really amazing knife. And then he went from that to the full-size Buster, the custom Buster, which was people love that knife. And the innovations there, which that's kind of Snex's thing, is every time he releases a model, he wants there to be some kind of innovation. On this one, it involved the detent ball. It's put in basically like almost like a pin rather than a ball, and it's accessible when the knife is closed, so you can actually reach down here in this channel and clean it out. You don't have to take the knife apart to clean the detent ball. It does give you a different style of detent than you might be used to, but I've come to really enjoy it. So obviously, this is on a frame lock. The original custom buster was also a frame lock. The next knife that he worked on was a semi-production version of the buster produced with Hoback knives, and he wasn't perfectly pleased with how this came out. There were some issues with the plunge grind being changed from what Snex had originally intended it to look like on his customs. And there were a few other things that kind of weren't handled the way that he wanted. Dr. Frunke has a video on that, and I'll link that below in the description if you'd like to check it out. And from there, he came up with, he collaborated with Wee on this, the Mini Buster, but then he also started working on the Vision series as a custom series. Now this is a Wee Vision R. So the Vision Customs were a huge hit, and then he partnered again with Wee to do a release of these. Amazing knife, I love these, and the innovation here, of course, is the Super Lock. This lock came out roughly the same time as the Demko's Shark Lock. I prefer the Super Lock. It's always been my favorite between the two. It's less clicky and mechanical feeling. I can understand why somebody might like that tactile nature of the Shark Lock, but for me, the Super Lock is preferable because I've had no issues with the Super Lock. I've had tons of issues with the Shark Lock. Hey guys, this is just a quick little video. I wanted to get your input because my Demko 8020.5 has started doing a very strange thing in regard to the lock. I don't know if it's just the lock wearing in or what, but when I put pressure on the jimping up here with my thumb, I can do this. You can see the lock pop backward. It won't go any further than this, but even so, like, that's bad. So I'm going to send it in under warranty. I'm curious, have any of y'all experienced that? I mean, surely that's not, that can't be under spec. Like, that's nuts. Trust me, I've heard from a bunch of people. Every time I complain about the Shark Lock, I've been buried in comments of like, well, there's nothing wrong with the Shark Lock, the Demkos know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. Look, I love Andrew Demko's work. I really do. I'm just going to call it like I've experienced it. I've had issues with the Shark Lock. The Super Lock, however, has been functionally perfect. I've had 3 knives that have had Super Locks, and I haven't had any problems with any of them. So I'm a big fan of that innovation. So that was the Vision, and then from the Vision, he partnered with Civivi to bring us an affordable Vision, the Vision FG. This one, instead of being in titanium with a super steel, this one is obviously in G10 with a Damascus that I believe is based on 9CR. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the case. And just an awesome, affordable knife. I think these came in, the Damascus version I think was like right at 100, and the base version I believe was at like 76, which is an amazing price. And that brings us next to the Tyro. That's one that I don't have. Also featured the Super Lock. The idea behind this one is it's very small. You'll see an image of it here. It's a very pocketable knife, which isn't really my thing. I'm more into a larger size knife, a full size knife, 3.5 and up. So I haven't picked one of those up. I may convince myself to perhaps at Blade Show this year. And then from there, now here we are at the full size Buster. The fact that it's come full circle from 2017 is so cool to me, and it's thrilling. And it's exciting to me anytime a very successful and talented maker finds a way to bring us an affordable option for an excellent custom piece. So really excited about that. So I've been rambling on a lot already, but I wanted y'all to hear that whole story behind Snex because he's up there with Demko for me as favorite designer. I really kind of go between the two quite a lot. So what we're gonna do now is, I can't help, but I have to do this, so you're gonna have to roll with me. I gotta tell y'all why these knives mean so much to me and the connection that they have to Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time. I encountered that game at an age, I was about 10, and it's one of those ages where it's an extremely impactful age to have a story kind of reach you. And the story of that game really blew my mind. Basically everything it deals with has this incredible art style. I'll never forget the cover of the game, which I'm sure plenty of people are familiar with the cover of that game. It's a very striking black and white image of this guy standing in front of this enormous industrial tower with this massive sword on his back, the Buster sword. Just an iconic image that's seared into my brain. So the art style was beautiful. It was one of these games where they, I believe it was the first 3D rendered JRPG. Don't quote me on that either. But they have 3D rendered characters with beautiful painted 2D backgrounds. Just stunning stuff. Visually lovely game. So you've got that. You've got the world building, which is amazing. You've got this dystopian, cyberpunk kind of future setting, but yet there's still scenes of nature that are really beautiful and endearing, but they're also kind of surrounded by this oppressive nature of industrialization. It's a huge thing. To me, as somebody that's always loved being outside, it's something that kind of freaks me out a little bit, but it's also, there's a beauty in it. It's a strange kind of dichotomy going on there. All that to say, it leads up to kind of unveiling basically an approach to the Gaia theory, which is another thing that means a lot to me, the idea that this planet we're on is part of kind of a synchronistic relationship with the things that live on it. You know, we're all in this as one, almost as one kind of thing. And that to me is something that's always floored me. I love that idea, I love that concept. And that's a big part of Final Fantasy VII. But basically what it all boils down to is this sword, or this knife, is called the Buster knife, and the sword in the game is called the Buster sword. I have no concrete evidence that there's any connection here, but the similarities just drive me nuts. The Buster knives and the Buster sword. So obviously the name, number one, the name. And to me, the Buster sword is such an iconic piece of pop culture. I mean, even people that don't play games have seen the Buster sword. So I thought that it's such a notable thing that I'm like, calling a knife the Buster is already kind of like, okay, surely you're aware of where you're drawing that from. But then on top of that, the profile. We're going to use the big one here. I think it's the best example of just the blade. If you look at that blade in profile and imagine the edges on this side, that's the Buster sword. I mean, that is the shape of the blade. That's it. And again, that to me is just like, yeah, that's it. There's a connection here. I don't know. Again, I don't want to, obviously I'm not speaking for Snex. This is my own, goober interpretation. But there is a connection here, and that's what I believe at least. And it makes me really happy to carry these knives. Final Fantasy VII, amazing game. The original came out in 1998. That was when I first played it. It blew my mind, and in 2019 or 2020, the remake came out, and the remake was utterly stunning. I loved it. I have some issues, but overall, I think it's incredible. I'm playing through Rebirth right now, and it's equally satisfying to play through. So getting to experience that all over again, gosh, how many years later? I don't know, 20-something years later. It's wild. Absolutely wild. So these knives mean so much to me because when I carry them around, I feel like I'm carrying a piece of all that I attached to Final Fantasy VII. I feel like I'm carrying a piece of that with me. So thank you for putting up with my TED Talk here, but I really love these knives for that reason. So that's again why this is such a big deal to me that this one's come out now. So let's get into the review here. Good Lord, we're 12 minutes in, and I'm sure you guys want to be hearing about this knife, hearing about this review. So let's do it. We're going to do the review first, and then we're going to get into the disassembly, and we're going to see the insides of this. And then with the Mini Buster, we are also going to do a disassembly here. We're going to take it apart, and I've already done the work, but we're going to go back in time and see. I basically resharpened the edge and reprofiled it to a 20 degree edge per side. And then we're also going to talk about this custom lanyard that I added, which again, if you know Final Fantasy VII, that may means something to you. So, all right, so the new Civivi Buster FG, this thing is so awesome, and I genuinely believe that this could be an 80-20 killer. I really do. The fact of the matter is you're paying $100 for a knife that is in excess of 4 inches of Nitro V, which is fantastic. And functionally, I've only handled a couple of full-size 80-20, so just my sample pool was small, but both of them did not feel as good as this thing. That's a huge thing to me. This thing feels awesome. Now it's not perfect, and we'll get into that, but it just feels so awesome to handle and use this knife. I'm telling you, it's just epic. So let's talk about the specs. We're going to compare it directly to the Mini Buster. So the Mini, that's a 3.5 inch blade on the Mini. On the large, we have a 4.2 inch blade, just absolutely massive. So that might be something, depending on where you're located, that might be something to take into consideration. You may want to prefer the Mini over the full size. The downside there, though, is that the Minis are being discontinued. So if you want one, I mean, they're already gone in a lot of places, but if you can still get them on eBay. So if you want one, get on eBay, and for retail, they're not being overpriced. So if you want one, get on eBay and get you one before they're all gone. So Mini Buster, I said 3.5 on the blade, 4.2 on the large one. One thing you'll notice is how much taller that blade is on the full-size Buster versus the Mini. That blade is massive, absolutely massive. Now the best part about it is that it gives it so much time to drop down to a really thin edge here behind the edge that this thing will slice like you would not believe. It's really fantastic. It's a pretty, not a deep hollow grind, but it's a good hollow grind here, and it just works its way down all the way to this nice, and it's not crazy thin. It's not like a Three Rivers Manufacturing Atom thin, but it's reasonably thin here. This thing's definitely made to slice. So that's something that really impressed me there. So something else we should talk about is the handle thickness. On both of these knives, the handle thickness is actually the same, 1/2 inch. And I think that a large knife with a reasonably thin handle is always a nice thing, and it feels really great on this one as well. Lastly, I do want to bring up the weight, because obviously there's a substantial weight difference here. The Mini Buster comes in at 4 ounces, and the full-size Buster's coming in at 6.4, which you feel it. It's not totally unwieldy, but you do feel it. However, the nice thing about the way the weight is distributed is that this knife has a pretty excellent balance point here, right on the index choil of your index finger. So that's fantastic. And the way that it's accomplishing that is through these portals. This is a negative that I want to come back to, but I wanted to point them out now. I'm sure you've already noticed them because they are pretty striking. Obviously, this portal up top here is a callback to the original Buster design with that elongated portal. But these ones at the back are new, and we'll talk about more about those in just a little bit here. Now, the biggest difference between these two knives, of course, is the locks. As I said earlier, on the Mini Buster, we have a frame lock that functions really excellently. It disengages very nicely. The knife's action is very smooth. Really enjoyable to use that. On this one, we have the super lock. And I think the argument that I would make for the super lock is it's a stronger lock. It's kind of been proven to be a stronger lock. The way that it engages with the blade tang as well as the stop pin ensures a sturdier lockup. So points there right off the bat. But the biggest thing is that you don't have to get your finger in the blade path to close the knife. Pull that tab and your hand is totally safe from the edge of the knife. So that's really awesome. A lot to be said for with that. On top of that, this action is just fun. I mean, the fact that you can just do this all day and just swing this thing around, you know, the same way that people love axis locks or crossbar locks, it's that same kind of tactile feeling of being able to do that. The same reason people love the shark lock. I just prefer this one though, because in my experience, it's definitely been a better performer. So the biggest difference between the two, other than, you know, obviously the size. And another thing that we'll point out here, I'm sure you've seen the scale material is quite a bit different. We have G10 on this model with stainless steel liners. And the liners, interestingly, are stylistically proud in some areas, like here on the butt, and then up here at the top of the knife here, it's proud, but it's not proud throughout. So interesting kind of design thing. Definitely something that makes sense to me that Snex would do. He does have very interesting design choices. And also, that G10 is very coarse. Something else to keep in mind, almost reminds me of a cold steel knife, how coarse that G10 is. This does come in 3 different versions. The one we're holding here is just the blue and silver version. I thought it was the classiest looking, I suppose, if you want to say that. There's also a black and gold version, which you could argue is even classier looking. For me, it was a bit much, a little gaudy. And it also had a 2-tone blade. I believe the hollow was black and the flat was satin. I'm pretty sure that's how they did it. Don't quote me on that though. There will be images here. And then lastly, there is a green and black one. The handle is green with black liners and hardware and a black blade. So this is my favorite out of the bunch. I've been debating whether or not I want to acid wash the liners. I don't think I will though. I think I'm just gonna keep it the way it is. It's just a super attractive knife, and I don't know. It's just really fantastic. All right, so little things here. The centering is perfect on mine. Now it came out of the box with a little bit of blade play, which I thought was strange, so I tightened it up, and it was a little off center, and I tightened it back to center, no blade play. So I guess they just didn't have it fully tightened down when they sent it. It was minuscule, but it was enough to notice. Now, no blade play at all. Locks up perfectly. There is no side to side. There is no vertical. It is dialed in. So let's see, studs. That's another big difference. The original knife had a flipper tab, which functions pretty darn nicely. It's not a hard detent. I kind of don't like hard detents. I prefer this one. It's kind of, I would call this like a mid-range detent, and it works really good once you get a feel for it. It definitely likes to be a push button kind of flip. Obviously this one has studs, and that's going to be another complaint I'm going to come back to in a minute. I'm trying to sort negatives into their own little box, but it has studs. They work pretty good. You can slow roll, you can flick. Hang on a minute, I'll do a flick here for y'all. A little bit harder for me to do that. And you can also reverse flick the knife as well. Everything works, so that's cool. And then of course, you can also deploy just with the super lock by itself. So that's nice too. So there are quite a few options for deploying this knife. And of course too, you can't really have a flipper tab with that super lock. It just, as far as I know, I can't think of a way to make that work. So it makes more sense to just go ahead and put the studs on. It would have been a hell of a power move from Civivi though, you know, for them to just say, hey, let's just not put the studs on. Let's preserve that classic Buster blade without any sort of, you know, attachments on it. And people can open it with the super lock. I understand why they didn't do that. Honestly, I don't even know if I would prefer it. I may prefer to have the studs as well, but man, it would have been a bold move. I kind of part of me wishes they just said, no, let's just do it. But yeah, so that's, I think, all the little things we're gonna hit on. I can't really show you lockup, just because we'll get to that during the takedown, the way that it works. But yeah, it feels fantastic. Very sturdy, very strong. So let's move on to the negatives here. There are a few. The biggest thing that bothers me is the pocket clip. I've never been a fan of this clip. This is kind of Civivi's standard deep carry clip. That's fine and all. The big thing that bothers me is the way that it is oriented here. It is canting outward, which generally is not a good idea. What you really want is your pocket clips to cant inward. I don't have a great example of that, but on the original Mini Buster, you can see that the location is totally different here. It's in the middle of the handle. And this allows, as the blade's sitting in your pocket, it allows the knife to, let's imagine this is like, you know, sitting in the pocket on the right side. It allows the knife to kind of sit like this and tuck the front of it out of the way. So as your hand reaches into your pocket, the knife's kind of leaning away from it. Now with the pocket clip oriented this way, it does more like this. So now as the knife's sitting in your pocket and you reach your hand in, you're having to kind of run your hand against it. It takes up more room. Long story short, it takes up more room in the pocket, and all of us knife guys know room in your pocket is kind of a priority. So that's one thing that bugs me. I don't know why they couldn't have canted it this way a little bit toward the inside. Maybe it's because of the portal here. That, I mean, it might make sense. It might be harder to get the knife over the lip of your pocket with that portal, if the pocket clip was right there. I don't know. So one of the things we're going to do right off the bat when we get to Disassembly is to replace that pocket clip. And I'm going to be replacing it with this milled titanium clip that I got for my FG Vision. I think it'll look a lot better. Okay, so another negative, the pivot. I think the pivot is awfully small for a knife this large. I don't know that there's any functional problem, but just visually it really kind of throws me for a loop. Massive, massive monster blade and then this tiny little pivot. It's really something. If you think to, well, actually, for example, the custom Buster, I'll throw a photo of that up again, you'll see how large the pivot is on that knife. It's just massive. So this almost felt like Civivi just grabbed an existing pivot, you know, off the shelf and stuck it in there. And I have mixed feelings about that. Actually, I have negative feelings about that. They're not mixed, they are negative. The last thing that I'll touch on, the studs. These studs should have been larger, just like the pivot. We should have had larger studs for a blade this massive. Stylistically, aesthetically, I think that they look good. They don't look bad, and they're subtle. There's a point for that. They're subtle, and that may have been a choice from Snacks. He may have wanted just to preserve the profile of the blade by using small studs. However, in actuating the knife with the studs, I'm just not crazy about it. Slow rolling's fine. Slow rolling's no problem. But flicking it is like, I definitely have to hit it with the wrist. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel fantastic. And even then, it doesn't feel great. Middle finger's not as bad, but still, it's not ideal. So my favorite way to open it typically is to just slow roll it, because that does feel really good. That said, we are deploying on bearings, so we'll see more about that when we take the knife apart. But being a Civivi, being a WE, they're using bearings, not using washers. The original Busters, I believe, the customs used washers. So that's all of the negatives. So where does that leave us with? I guess it's time to talk about whether or not this is a win. Obviously, I think it's a huge win. I love this thing. I think that for $100, what you're getting here is just phenomenal. I think it's really great. This just big, huge piece of Nitro V steel, expertly ground. That's another thing. I don't know that y'all really will be able to tell in the video here, but it's very well ground. It's also very well finished. As you can see, we have a vertical satin grind here on the hollow grind. On the flat, we have a horizontal grind, and then we have this very subtle swedge. This is on both sides, the swedge that extends here, and it widens very subtly. It widens from here to here. It gets a little bit wider as we approach the nose of the blade. I just am really impressed with all of the finishing done to this blade. I think it looks so, so good. The handle I like. I'm not totally in love with the handle, but it's good. It definitely, it feels good. It's ergonomic. There's not any hot spots that I've been able to identify. It feels great in hammer grip. Reverse grip is pretty good too, although again, I've never had a need to carry a knife like this. I don't know why you would, but we always check reverse grip. Saber grip is okay. Again, you've got the bump from the super lock coming up under your thumb. It doesn't feel terrible. And then, there's a nice jimping pad here. So saber grip works. Hammer grip though is really where it's at for me with this knife. I just love it. And let's see, as far as, there's one other thing I wanted to touch on here. Kind of a negative, maybe not, is this portal. I'm not crazy about this. In the original prototype that Sneck showed on his Instagram page for this run, this was open. It was totally open. There wasn't these two portals. There was just one big rectangular kind of portal. Now, I know why he closed it, because if you can imagine, you're holding the knife, you go to actuate the super lock, and somehow your pinky slips in. Ooh, good grief. You are getting an amputation. So I understand why he closed it. I just don't know that I would have wanted to do these two shapes. I just think they look kind of goofy. I don't know, maybe that's harsh. Maybe not goofy. I just don't like the look of them. I prefer the look of that completely open window, the way he had it. But again, that's just a little moan, not a big deal at all. Functionally, this knife is awesome. It's awesome, and I can't wait for you guys to have a chance to handle one of these. They're fantastic. It's really blown me away. Hopefully it'll be as successful as the FG was, because the Vision FG ended up having several different runs. We had it in Ultim and the clear one, which I guess is PEI, I don't know. And obviously the G10 one, micarta, all kinds of stuff. So I want to see this one get the same kind of proliferation that the Vision FG did. So, oh my gosh, guys. Thanks for listening to all that. We're not done. This is a long episode. Next up, we're going to go ahead and disassemble this guy, have a look at the internals. We're going to change that pocket clip. Not going to do any modding to this. This thing's too cool. There's nothing I would change, really, I don't think. It's great. So yeah, we're just going to switch that clip. That's really it. And then we'll move on to the Mini Buster. And what we're going to do on this again, I'm going to show how I reprofiled the edge on that. Did a little bit of a polishing job on the nose to bring back the tip, and added this Final Fantasy VII inspired lanyard. So we'll get into all that. But guys, thanks for joining. let's get to disassembly. All right, y'all, so before we jump into the disassembly, I thought we'd just have a quick look at the unboxing experience here. It's just your classic Civivi box. There's nothing special. Your classic Civivi pouch that I'm sure all of us are sick of. I've got so many of these things, I don't know what to do with them. Tons of stickers, that's cool. Nicely wrapped. Here's your knife and it's ready to rock. You also get a polishing cloth and some literature in there. So, just thought y'all might want to see that. There's nothing crazy going on here. In the disassembly, there was one fairly large issue that we had, but we'll get to it when we get to it. First up, we're using a T8 to get the pivot out. Now, that T8 feels quite a bit loose to me. It's not a snug fit, so I'm not crazy about that. The body screws are T8 with the exception of the pocket clip screws. Those are T6. Now, right here, you're going to see me strip that top pocket clip screw, which absolutely should not be happening. Now the reason for this is that somehow the screw got stuck within its well in the pocket clip, which is not something I've ever had happen before. It's very bizarre. It wasn't a Loctite issue, it was just simply a mechanical issue of the screw being unable to turn inside the pocket clip. Very strange. At this point though, I was trying a different driver. I think I tried 2 different drivers, and seeing that nothing was going to work, I decided to disassemble from the opposite side and just deal with the pocket clip when I got to that point. Now, one thing that I want to draw attention to here is when removing the scale from the body as well as the liner, you want to watch out for the spring. You see that the stop pin and the spring have just kind of ejected from the knife. Fortunately, I caught the spring in my hand. You can see it right there. But that spring is very keen on shooting out of the knife. On any super lock, this is the case. We can see as well as we take off the scale and liner, we can see the assembly of the super lock. In this particular knife, it has one pin that it is chiefly riding on that interacts with the spring, and then the tongue moves between the tang of the blade and a pin that goes below the tongue of the super lock, as well as the stop pin which goes above the tongue of the super lock. So there's a lot of stuff happening here. There's a lot of parts to kind of keep track of, and we're going to line all those out. Obviously, the best way to keep track of all these pins is to set them aside as you disassemble them, and just pay attention to the order in which you're taking them out, and then set them aside in the same order. That way you won't get mixed up. But it is a lot to think about. This probably is, in terms of the mechanics, it's probably one of the more complicated knives in my collection. And here is exactly how it should be arranged when it's time to put the spring in. You can see the way the super lock is sitting there. We'll revisit that when we get to the reassembly. Here's a good look at the type of bearings that this knife is using. It's single row bearings, pretty straightforward. It's pocketed on both sides of the blade for those to slip into, and the closed side faces outward. Now we're going to take off that second standoff, try to get that screw out of there, and then as far as the last standoff and the pocket clip goes, we're going to go into the shop and have a look at the best way to get that out. There's a few different things I try, and none of it works particularly well, but we do succeed, so we'll get to that now. My first thought was to heat up the screw and try to see if that would break up any leftover Loctite that had dried on it. For this, I used my wife's old hair straightener, but a soldering iron would be fine too. It'd be a better tool if you got it. So I heat this up to 450 degrees, hold it on the offending screw for about a minute, and usually that's enough to break up any Loctite. So from here, we're going to take it to the vise, get that tightened up, and then I'm going to use a T6 wrench to try to get some extra torque. But even that doesn't work, and the bit just kind of spins in the screw. It's just totally stripped. So I actually next tried to drill it out using just a thin drill bit, and I thought the pressure might push it out, but that didn't work. And I forgot to record that part, so here we are at this point just bending the pocket clip back, and my plan was to take a T10 bit and hammer it into the screw. But at this point, it broke itself free from the threading. Got it. Jeez, what a pain in the ass. You can hear that I'm very happy about this. The joys of knife disassembly. So here's our exploded view. You can see the spring at the top, the 4 pins that interact with the super lock, our pivot screw, a body screw, our pivot, 2 bearings races, our broken pocket clip, 2 more body screws, a pocket clip screw, and the standoffs, our blade, 2 liners, 2 blue G10 scales, the super lock, and that is it. That's what goes into a Civivi Buster FG. Well, that was fun. I gotta love it when something silly and unexpected happens. This thing is stuck in the pocket clip somehow. I've never had that happen before. I can't get it out. You can see here where I attempted to drill it out. That didn't work. I thought maybe the pressure of the drill would pop it loose, but even it just started eating into the screw, so that didn't do me any good. I suppose I could have really kept at it, but I was too concerned about accidentally biting into the threading on the inside of that backspacer, or standoff, so I didn't want to risk it. So ultimately I bent the clip back, and that seemed to pop it loose on the threading, and I was able to unthread it out of the standoff. So at least it's off. Still pretty pissed off about that. Like I said, I still can't get it out. It's like freaking stuck in there. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know, man. Something weird's going on there. So I can get another one of these, no problem. I actually think I have one laying around, so that's why I was like, screw it, I'll just bend the clip. All right. On that note, guys, let's get this thing put back together. Not going to do anything crazy here. Just going to wipe down with some camellia oil. Love this stuff. I use it on everything. Honestly, it really doesn't need it since it's factory fresh. So we'll just kind of wipe these scales down real quick, give them a once over. Yeah, so we can see here that is our milled, what would you call that? It used to be they would use D-shaped pivots, but Civivi does this thing where they mill in a pocket here that tucks into the G10 to keep it captive. So anyways, that's what allows that. I guess we'll go ahead and pop that in. So this is our super lock here. It's amazing how much shorter it is than the the original. Look at that. Look how much shorter it is than the original super lock. That's crazy. Pretty cool. This one's definitely beefier, but you know, much bigger knife, so it makes sense. It has to go here, yeah, because then this backs into here. Yep. Yeah, I believe that's right. And our, oh yeah, lost that one. And our spring goes in that pocket. All right, let's take this guy here. This is the pocket clip I want to use, hopefully. So the way things are going, who knows? Is that a T8? It feels like a T8. I think it's a T8. What were they doing using T6 on this? This is nuts, man. I hope that'll fit. I've had to modify this one. You can buy these pretty easily on Amazon. Civivi sells them there. But if you want one for either the Vision FG or the Buster FG, you're going to need to sand down this section here because it's going to be a little too proud to fit perfectly. Even then, it still is going to sit kind of not perfect, but that's okay. All right, let's get the pins back in place. I like how loosely that one fits. Feels like it should fit tighter. All of them feel like they should fit tighter. They're just kind of loose in there. Okay, there's that. Here's our lock bar. Yeah, it does this. This is what it does right here. Okay, cool. Yes. All right, so we're not going to pop the spring in just yet, I don't think. Let's go ahead and get a dab of camellia oil here. That should be like that, and then that goes into there. Yep. So at which point we'll do that. And then let's try to get the spring in place, and we'll drop this liner on. Working with springs is always fun. Is that in? Not the way I'd like. Sit nicely for me, please. Okay, that feels okay. All right. Trick here is to try to shield the thing. There we go, beautiful. Wonderful. Everything is seated, that's great. All right, half the battle's over here. Okay, great, now we're moving. Oh yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Much nicer. No play, no play. Beautiful action. Yay! Well, that was an adventure. Always love a good adventure. All that for a pocket clip. Good grief. Well, I hope you guys had fun with that. We're jumping on to the Mini Buster now. That does look slick though, doesn't it? I mean, that kicks the shit out of this thing. Good grief. I hate these clips. I really freaking do. So now we need to figure out where my old clip is so I can put it back on here. Either that, I'll just order another one of these. These things are cheap, but I will think it over. All right, guys, so on to the Mini Buster. Let's do it. The first order of business here is reprofiling that edge. The wee Mini Buster is fairly thick behind the edge, and I wanted to bring it down to 20 degrees per side, which honestly is not particularly narrow. There's people that like it quite a bit narrower than that. But what we're going to use in order to do this is the Kin Onion Edition Work Sharp with the belt grinder attachment. I love this thing. I'm a big fan of this system. I know a lot of people aren't big fans of motorized systems, but for me it works fantastic. It takes some getting used to. There's a steep learning curve. You don't want to mess your blades up, so my rule is low and slow. Just work your way through those grits and take it easy. This blade shape, however, is one of the easiest to learn on. This is what it looks like from my angle, and basically just taking it nice and slow, running the length of that blade down the belts a couple times on one side, and then I'll feel it for a burr, and then I'll repeat that process. The easiest thing that you could do though is applying a Sharpie at the very beginning. That'll let you see where the material is being removed and where you have yet to hit. So it's definitely worth doing that. So a reprofile takes quite a while, but at this point I'm happy with it. You can see the gleam on that edge. So now we're going to try to fix the nose of the blade. One thing that had occurred with this knife is, and I can't even remember how it happened, but the tip had been rolled just a little bit. And the best way to bring a tip back is to basically grind down the nose of the blade just a little tiny bit. And it actually is such a small amount that it's almost imperceivable. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use the Work Sharp here to just kind of rub that nose a little bit, just a little bit at a time, checking it very, very often until we get it to that point where we have a nice pointy tip once again. So I'm starting with a rough belt to make the initial pass, and then I want to bring it up to a high polish, ideally a mirror polish. So once again, we're going to work our way through these grits and try to get a nice polish on it. Last step here is to combine it with some Flitz metal polish on my finest belt. I'm a big fan of this stuff, and it's what I use to get my mirror finishes. All right, y'all, so just finished sharpening and polishing the nose there. I don't know how well you can see that here, but there's a section there right in the middle that I couldn't quite nail on the belt. So I'm going to take this polishing cloth attachment for the Dremel and put some flits on that and try to get this one little section here that I can't quite hit. So I'm going to mask up the nose again and just do that real fast. And then after that, disassembly, clean this thing up because, well, I'll get into that when we get to the disassembly, but we'll do that. And then I've also got some ideas for the lanyard because I'm not going to mod this. This knife is perfect, but a lanyard would be a cool way to, accent it, make it feel a little more Final Fantasy VII, a little more Buster Sword, and I've got an idea for that. So first, let's get to polishing. Let's make sure that the masking is done perfectly. That is the most important thing that you can do before a Dremel project. If there's parts of the material you're working on that need to be preserved, just really nail that masking. So we get some flits on that cloth and we're going to take it to the nose of the blade here. Again with the Dremel, always be very careful. It's really easy for things to go sideways with a Dremel. All right, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and quit while I'm ahead because working with that Dremel makes me nervous. I'm always afraid it's going to slip off and pull the masking back and put a scratch on the blade. So I'm okay with it. It's not perfect. I think you can kind of see right here that streak if I can hold my hand still. Golly, I'm shaking. There you go. There you can see it. So there's kind of that spot in the middle that's not fully polished, but I just don't want to risk it anymore. I'm happy with it overall. You really can only see it when you've got it in direct light like that. Otherwise, in like normal indoor lighting, it looks perfect. So we're going to stick with that. All right, guys. So I'm really pleased with the sharpening job. Also pleased with the polishing job on the nose there. I think that looks really nice, especially when it's closed up and you kind of look down at it in the pocket. I mean, that looks super good. I love it. So what we're going to do now, we're simply going to take this thing apart and give it a cleanup. This should be pretty quick, and I probably won't even fast forward on this because that's how easy this knife is to work on. It's a T8 throughout, and you've only got 2 screws to really deal with here. First up, we have our large main pivot screw there. Love that pivot on that thing. Here's our body screw, of course. All right, so as you can see, we've got it already down to the blade and the scales. Let's see if that pivot's a little tough to get out. There we go. There's our pivot there. Come on. Let's see if I can get these, coax these out. There we go. Double row bearings, always love to see that. It's a very smooth action. I love double row bearings. We've also got another stainless steel washer in there. Let me see if I can lift that out. Here we go. This is what I need. All right, guys, that stop pin's not coming out. I'm not going to push it. I don't want to mar it up by trying to get it off with the pliers. So we're going to leave that piece in. That's the only piece we can't get out. So forgive me that today is not a full disassembly, but we will get the pocket clipped out here. Like I said, I could drive it out from the other side, but again, I don't want to put a mark on it for no reason. There we go. All right. So we got literally everything else out here. So super quick disassembly, very easy, very easy. Y'all can see it's kind of dirty and oily on the inside here. So we're gonna clean this thing up. Let me tidy this up and then we'll have our exploded view of the Wee Snex Mini Buster. All right, so let's get through our parts list here. We got our pivot screw. We have one of the body screws, our pivot, another body screw, a receiver, 2 stainless steel washers to act as a shield against the titanium for the bearings, 2 double row bearings. Awesome, love double row bearings. Titanium scale, y'all can see how nice and milled out these scales are. I really love the portals here. I've always been a big fan of kind of like a portal that's not overpowering, and I feel like these really do that. It looks really good. The milling on these scales is just it's another level, and it was the first thing that really caught my eye about this knife, and it's one of the large reasons why I love it so much. Here's our backspacer. It has kind of this cool effect. I don't know if you call it quite a floating backspacer, but it has this sort of section here that's milled out, so you can see through the back of the knife. That's really cool. And it's got a brushed finish, so kind of a nice additional finish that is kind of a little highlight point in the knife. Here's our other scale here with the stop pin still stuck in it. Again, I'm not gonna push that. We'll leave it. Same as the other scale though, really awesome, nicely done scale. You can see a closer look at the lock bar cut out here and the lock bar itself, which is also milled. The detent on here is a proprietary system that Snex came up with. I can't remember what he calls this thing, but it's a very well-designed detent that is, the idea behind it is that when the knife, the detent ball is kind of easier to access to clean when you have the knife disassembled. Here's our pocket clip, really cool milled pocket clip. This thing looks awesome. As you can see, it's got a lot of wear on it from carry. Our pocket clip screw and our 20 CV blade with that lovely mirror finish on it. Looks really good, and the polished nose there. Awesome. Let's get this thing cleaned up and put back together. This is going to be pretty minimal, guys. Let me start. We're going to be using Camellia knife oil here to kind of clean everything up. This is from KPL. All right, cool. I think we're ready to put it back together. All right, let's start by getting this backspacer in place. Get that over there. So yeah, very easy knife to maintain. I really enjoy working on this one. It's just a breeze to work on. Let's see, let's try to go ahead and get this centered. So as you can see here, it's way off center. Obviously we just tightened the pivot down until we hit center, but this backspacer, the way that it terminates here at the end of the handle, the centering is really important. If it's off, it is glaringly obvious. So let's get that dialed in here. All right. And the other thing is you have a free spinning pivot, so you have to account for that as well. Okay, let's check that. Oh yeah, perfect lockup. Awesome, okay. We have a bit of a, ooh, man, that action. Wow, okay. And that's just from the Camellia oil being rubbed on the inside. That's nuts. Whoa, dude. Oh my God, that's the best action this knife has ever had. Oh my Lord, okay. Wow, that's awesome. All right, guys, there is the Snex Wee Mini Buster. Nice and clean, and whew, the action is bananas. Oh my God. Oh my Lord. Oh, man, that is sexy. Okay, guys, so now let's get to work on the lanyard and really make this thing feel like the Buster sword. All right, guys, so let's get into it. All right, y'all, so for the lanyard, what we're gonna be doing is, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy VII and Cloud's Buster Sword, when he starts the game, he has two types of materia that are slotted into the sword. Materia is what gives characters in the game special abilities and kind of like magic abilities and stuff, and they grant you powers. And so the two that he has slotted into it are two green ones. One is Bolt, which is like a lightning attack, and one is Ice, so like a freezing attack, if I remember correctly. And that is a really cool sort of aspect of the game where when you change materia types, the colors of the materia are different. So for those magic ones, they're green. So I found a string of like kind of these jade sort of beads at Hobby Lobby. I mean, that's dead on the color that green materia is. That's just perfect. So these are awesome. I wish they were a little bit bigger, but also I think once they're on, it's gonna look really good. So that was my first idea, was to use these. The only problem is that I cannot thread 550 paracord through there. The holes are too small, and I don't want to try drilling it because I think it'll just crack the beads. Here's my gray paracord that I'm going to be using. I think that'll go really good with the green. But what we're going to do to kind of work on that is I have waxed thread here, and the nice thing about waxed thread is that you can singe it like you can singe paracord, and you can kind of seal it, if you know what I mean. You just take an open flame and it'll kind of burn up and melt, and then it'll dry really quickly. So we're going to try to thread the beads on this wax thread and then somehow bind it to the paracord knot. So I'll be doing a snake knot all the way down, probably like 4 or 5, probably 4 snake knot. I would do 7, but I mean that's ridiculous. It'll be too long. So probably 4 snake knots, and then on the last one somehow I'm going to try to tie that wax thread into it. And I need 2. I specifically need 2 because that's how Cloud starts the game. He's got 2 materia. We need 2. So I think this idea with the beads is going to work. So let's get to it.
So as usual, a rather simple concept that took quite a bit longer than it needed to. As you can see here though, we're starting with the paracord first. And I know I said like 4 or 5 snake knots, but I decided to ultimately just do 2. I felt like with the 2 knots and then the 2 jade beads, you don't want to have something that's just too unwieldy. So snake knots are really easy to make, and they're wonderful for lanyards. If you go on YouTube, you can look up snake knot tutorials, but very straightforward, very easy to do. So 2 quick snake knots here, and then we'll get into the waxed thread and the jade beads. The trickiest part of this was threading the wax thread with the paracord when making the snake knots. That took the most time, and I ended up having to do it I think 3 times before I actually had one that succeeded. But once that was done, getting the jade beads on was no problem at all. They just slipped right on, and from there it was simply a matter of singeing everything appropriately so that all of the knots were sealed and everything wasn't going to move. We weren't going to lose any beads or anything like that. But it was a success, and now we have a wee mini buster that has its appropriate materia right there along with it. I couldn't be more stoked about it.
Brief closing thoughts here on these 2 awesome busters. 2 knives that are totally worthy of the name Buster, by the way. These things are just so fantastic. So really what I wanted to address in this segment is, which one of these should you purchase? And if you want to know my favorite, I'll tell you up front, if I have to choose one, I'm choosing the wee mini Buster, simply because of the fit and finish on it, the materials. The milled titanium is absolutely beautiful. The action is really, really nice. It's a joy to work on and to take apart and to reassemble. It's an excellent knife, but this thing is no slouch at all. This thing is amazing, honestly. It's such a cool knife. 4.2 inches of Nitro V steel. You've got the super lock on there, and it works flawlessly. And with this big weighty blade, it feels really cool to use that super lock as well. It's visually just, even though it's using materials that aren't quite as nice as titanium, you know, you've got G10 and stainless steel, it's still visually awesome to look at. There's just a lot going on. The G10 feels great. So yeah, there's really not a wrong answer here. I gave you mine, but there's no wrong answer. So let's talk about different reasons. If you're working on a tighter budget, obviously the Civivi is your answer here. For less than $100, for like $97. As I said, we've got that huge blade. We've got excellent G10. We've got the super lock for less than $100. Now go to Demco and try to get yourself a shark lock for less than $100. Yeah, good luck with that. This thing is just fantastic for the money. It punches so hard, and the fact that it's $200 less than the smaller option is just crazy. So that's a good reason, finance reasons, that's a good one to go with the Buster FG. If size is an issue though, we have to come back to that and consider the Mini Buster. I'm not familiar with different locations, legal ramifications, but 3.5 inches is a heck of a lot smaller than 4.2 inches. So you might have to consider that with where you live. Fortunately, where I live, I can carry pretty much whatever I want. But that might be something that you want to consider. And again, guys, one other thing I will say is that these are going away. So if you're attracted to this model at all, go ahead and get it while you can. But again, size, budget, and then just cool factor. And the cool factor is the hardest because they're both cool. There's nothing wrong with saying you think this one's cooler than that one. Absolutely, they're awesome. So all that said, guys, let me know which one you would go with. That's what I really want to know. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. And then aside from that, I just want to say thank you all so much for if you made it to the end of this video with me. Man, thank you so much. It really means a lot, especially when I get to just nerd out on a video and kind of go all in on the editing and people make it all the way. That's just really gratifying to me. So thank you. And feel free to, share in this, insane passion for, FF7 and SNEX designs and all that stuff with me. I'm always happy to talk about that stuff. So if you want to throw it out in the comments, yeah, go for it, and I'll be happy to respond. But yeah, guys, thank you again. I'm Enzo. This has been Takedown Talk 17, 2 Buster knives, just awesome. And this has been Knox Knife Mods, and we will see y'all in the next video. Peace.